We're about to find out if these lures should be outlawed. My name is Wesley Littlefield with anglers.com, and Lawless Lures sent me a package of their Recoil baits to test out. So I'm at a high pressured public pond to try out. And honestly, I was a little bit skeptical because I'd fished these at my private pond a few times and hadn't had a bite until this happened. What's a fish? Holy crap, that's a big fish. Golly, I did not know. Oh, dang it! That was a freaking giant. Oh. Did not set the hook good on that one. So that happened earlier today, and that got me a little bit more excited to fish these lures. And hopefully we can pull a few out of the water today with this and not let them get away like that one did. And as I'm fishing, I'm gonna tell you what I like about this lure and what I don't like about it, so you can decide for yourself if this is something that you want to buy. So when I first got these, I was really excited to test them out. So I went home, threw them in the pond, and just never got a bite, not even a nibble, no interest at all. I thought, well, maybe it's just the time of year. So I waited a month or so till the water warmed up even more. Still nothing. Fished them a little bit during the summer. Still not a single bite. And then finally today, which is in the fall, I threw it out in my pond and hooked into one of the biggest fish in the pond. I couldn't get it in. So that's one of the cons that I'm gonna say is the hook set just wasn't very good. And it might have been how I had it rigged, because I tried several different ways to rig it today just for the heck of it to see, you know, what works best. And I didn't really set the hook very hard, and maybe that would have helped too. I mean, obviously it would have helped, I think. So I do think that, you know, there's a few things that this soft plastic could improve on, and that's definitely one of them. So another one of the things that this soft plastic can improve on, I think, is the directions for how to actually rig it. It's not like this super simple, put the hook on and get to fishing rig. There's actually a little bit more to it, and it can be confusing when first starting out. It took me a little bit, you know, several tests of how to rig it to finally figure out the best way. And I think I've got it now to where I shouldn't lose nearly the amount of fish or anything, you know, and have it rigged pretty quick. So another disadvantage is that you actually need a specialized hook to rig it. So on top of being a little bit confusing to rig, now they do provide good instructions on how to rig this, but I just tinkered around with it, seeing if there was a better way and whatever. But you can't just use any special hook with it. You'll see that this hook has a special T on it, which actually keeps it from coming back over the lure. So you actually run the hook up through the bait here, and the eye pops out the top, and then you tie it, and that special T hooks onto the bait in the gills of this bait, or this soft plastic, and that, so you can't just use any old hook that you have laying around. You'll also notice that today where I'm fishing, it's a little bit of wind. There's not a ton, and that's because I've tried fishing in the wind with this lure, and it's not meant for the wind. It's too lightweight. It's hard to fish it. It's hard to feel a bite. It's hard, just everything about it's not right for the wind. So I don't recommend fishing in the wind. This is like a 7 to 10 mile an hour wind today, and I'm kind of in a little bit of a hole blocked by trees. So right here, it's not too bad of a wind, but I really wouldn't want to be fishing out on the main lake today, even with this, you know, unless I had some kind of windbreak there. I've been pretty harsh with this lure, so let's talk about why I think this lure is worthy of being put in your tackle box. One reason why I like this lure so much is because I can fish it fast or I can fish it slow. I can fish it anywhere in the water column that I want to. So if I'm in a hurry and I think that, you know, that top water bite is pretty good, or even just below the surface, you know, I want to keep it high in the water column is what I'm trying to say. Then I can fish this lure that fast and not worry about, you know, it sinking too fast for where I want to keep it high. Or if they're a little bit deeper, I know that, hey, I've got to slow down and let this lure sink a little bit before I start jerking on it and reeling it in. Another reason why I love this lure is it's actually kind of a combination of two lures in my opinion. So it kind of acts like an Inu rig, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a Japanese rig that's kind of taken the country by storm, but when you pull it in the water, it actually curls, and this paddle right here hits the water, and it curls like that, and then it straightens back out, hence the recoil bait, and it looks like a dying fish. So it kind of looks like that, and it looks like one of my favorite rigs, the wacky rig, because the wacky rig, you know, it comes together and then releases kind of like a recoil. So that's another reason why to love this, is because it's a lot easier to rig than an Inu rig. I know I said it's difficult to rig, but it's way easier to rig than an Inu rig, and it mimics a wacky rig too. So I think you're getting the best of both worlds with that. So that's another reason why, just to add it to your tackle box. And one final reason to love the Lawless Lures recoil bait is because it's still relatively new. The fish aren't accustomed to seeing it. It's something a little bit different. It looks similar, like I said, to a wacky rig and an Inu rig, but it's still just a little bit different. And sometimes that's all you need to trigger a bite. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how to rig it. So when you open up the package, you're gonna pull out one of the soft plastics, and they also send the hooks that you need with it. Right here, the T-hooks, pull one of those out. There you go. Now when you first rig it, when I first rigged it, I actually poked a hole through the top where I wanted to run it through. So I went like this, through the top of the bait. And you see where it opens up like that? And I wanted to poke out the hole right in between that gill and have it come out just like that. So now it comes out, and I have the hook like so. Now we're going to take the hook back out. This time we're going to take the eye of the hook and follow that hole that you just created. So push it up and through, and the hook should set just like that. So now you've got that. Now you're ready to take your line. All right, so we've got our bait, we've got our hook in it. We're gonna take our line and run it through. There's a hole here at the tail. You're gonna run the line through on the same side as the hook. You see the hook there? I'm gonna run the line through that hole, just like so, and pull out a bunch of extra. There you go. Now you're gonna run it through the eye of the hook and tie your favorite knot. Mine is like an improved clinch knot, but just about anything will work. If you need to learn how to tie a knot, I've actually got a video that I'll leave linked right here that you can check out and teach you the knots that you actually need for bass fishing. Now that's how to rig it. I've tried to rig it where the hook is a little bit more covered and the line just gets twisted. It doesn't recoil quite right. This is the only way that's worked for me. There might be a better way, but I have yet to find it. Now let's talk a little bit about how to actually fish this. All I'm gonna do is cast it out, and then I'm gonna let it sink. Depending on where the fish might be, whatever, you have to test that out for yourself, how far you let it sink, if you let it sink all the way to the bottom, or if you just let it sink for a second and start twitching the rod. Important thing here is how I hold the rod. When I'm pulling it back, if I pull it up like this, you'll see that the lure, it comes to the surface way too fast. So instead of pulling it directly to me and up at me like this, I'm actually gonna hold my pole to the side, like so, and I'm gonna pull it back like this to the side. Kind of like you work a jerkbait. I would say it's pretty similar to working a jerkbait. And I'm just gonna 1, 2, 3, and then I'm gonna let it set. Whoa, that was a fish, and I missed it. But then I'm gonna let it sit, and then I'm gonna jerk it again. Then I'm gonna let it sit, 1, 2, 3, and then let it go again. Obviously, you play around with however many jerks. 3 isn't perfect. Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2, and just kind of depending on the fish's mood. That fish right there apparently liked that 1, 2, 3, and then let it sit for a second. So we're gonna try that again. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna let it sit. Sometimes I reel it in and make that slack line tighter so there's not as much slack when that fish hits it like it did. So that's the slow way to fish it. Sometimes, like today, I really think they're liking it a little bit faster. I've noticed that the bites that I've gotten, I've actually been working the bait a little bit faster. It's that time of year where they're chasing bait, so it makes sense. So I'm basically gonna do everything the same, except instead of letting it sink to the bottom, I'm just gonna start popping it right away. And I'm gonna reel up my slack pretty quick and popping it right away. Reel up my slack pretty quick and popping it. This keeps that high in the water column because it doesn't give it a lot of time to sink. Obviously there's no weight here. And so the fish will come up, be looking at it instead of watching it sink. They'll be looking up at it. It's just a different approach. And sometimes that's what they want. That's what triggers the bites. So that's how I fish it. It's really pretty simple rig, and that's why I really like it on how to fish it. Cast it out, 1 jerk, 2 jerks, whatever, 3, 4. Usually when I hit 3 to 4, I'll feel it kind of vibrate. And at that point, I know that I've kind of overdone it, because you actually want that bait to recoil. And when you feel it vibrate, you'll notice that the tail is what's twitching. And I have yet to have a bite off of that. So I'm not saying that it won't work if you just cast it and reel it out, but working it like a jerk bait is best. So now we know how to fish it. Let's talk about where to fish it. Because of this exposed hook, I'm not gonna fish it around thick vegetation. I might go ahead and fish it in sparse weeds. You'll notice that this pond has some sparse holes, sparse weeds, and I've got hung up once. I got it back, thank goodness. But you still run the risk of getting hung up pretty regularly if it's really thick vegetation. So I wouldn't be fishing it in like that. I also wouldn't toss it up into a brush pile. Around the edge of a brush pile would be great. But generally, I'm fishing it in open water because it's got a really big exposed hook, nothing covering it, and it's just gonna be prone to snagging if you fish it anywhere other than open, maybe a little bit along the rocks, as long as you don't let it get into the rocks. But overall with this lure, I don't think it should be outlawed. I don't see enough reasons to say that, oh, this lure is just gonna annihilate all the fish. I have yet to have just like a killer day with it, to be honest. Now, granted, maybe that day's coming in the near future. I sure hope so. But as of right now, this lure should not be outlawed. But I do think that it has a place in my tackle box that I'm gonna keep using it and keep testing it out and see. But if you wanna see one lure that absolutely I 100% think you should buy, just because it's a new innovation that people are already copying, then you can check out the video down below me, and I'll see you there.
Hey guys, it's Sean with Lawless Lures. I want to show you a little bit about our Recoil bait. This is our 4 1/4 Road. If you're looking at here, this is what happens in slow motion when you're twitching your rod tip underwater. So you load the lure and it recoils. If you look inside here, there's a T-bar that's welded to our hook, right? That sits up like a shirt on a hanger, and that locks that hook straight up and down. Now that hook can't roll side to side, because when you set the hook, it's gonna do a 180 inside the fish's mouth. So now that hook has a backbone for when you grab that, it's gonna set the hook for you. It launches that hook up into the fish's mouth. We also brought this tail up high and put that split in there, and that's your weed guard. It's not a weedless bait, but you'd be surprised where you can fish this thing. I fish it in the holes, in the weeds. I skip it underneath docks, holes in lily pads, above grass, on weed edges. What you want to do with this thing is let it go all the way down into the hole, twitch it a couple times. We developed this on a lake that was so weedy, all it had was little holes throughout for us to fish, and we needed a place where we could fish this thing and not have to reel it in. So you cast it into the hole, twitch it a couple times, close it down, and feather it through to the next hole. That's it.